Hello everyone. Welcome back to Unfuck Your Money. I am your host, Nadine Zamot, certified money coach and somatic healing practitioner. So, before we dive into today's episode, I have a little confession to make. I have catastrophizing tendencies big time. It is so destructive and so detrimental to my mental health. Sometimes even my imaginary worst case scenario thinking might even lead me to spending money as a way to distract or avoid these hypothetical situations that my mind imagines. So back in February, I suddenly suffered from a severe neurological infection that left me temporarily unable to do most things, and it left me very anxious. I've received treatment for it and I'm 99% back to normal, but I still find myself spiraling into what if it comes back thinking, even after lots of reassurance from my medical team that the possibility of it returning is very low to non-existent. Yet I still catastrophize. And before I had this medical issue, I often found myself catastrophizing about my finances. The problem with catastrophizing is that the mind cannot problem solve hypothetical or imaginary situations. So what happens is that we get stuck in a downward spiral. And let me tell you this, the tendency or the habit of catastrophizing is a trauma response. And it can also be a clue that we still have some shit to work through. Catastrophizing is one of the smart ways, one of the many smart ways that our minds try to anticipate, control, or prepare for the next threat. This tendency happens when we've had a past that has shown us that something bad can indeed happen suddenly or without warning. This can happen, this can be something due in childhood or later in life. So where does catastrophizing come from? The first thing that I have noticed is that catastrophizing can be a result of living in chronic unpredictability. So if you grew up in a home where things could go wrong any minute without warning, for example, you have a moody parent or a parent suddenly got sick. If you've gone through emotional neglect as a child, abuse, war, poverty, or chaos, your nervous system learned safety is not consistent. I must always be alert and hypervigilant. That constant scanning can turn into imagining the worst case scenario, so you are never caught off guard ever again. The second scenario, which is one of the things that I mentioned earlier today, is medical trauma or misdiagnosis. If you've ever felt ignored, misdiagnosed, or had something health-related that spiraled fast, like with me with Guillain-Barré syndrome, our brain remembers how vulnerable and powerless that felt. So what happens is that it says, next time I'm going to be ready, even if it means I am going to keep on rehearsing every possible disaster. Parentification, or being the strong one, is another reason why we might have these catastrophizing tendencies. So parentification means that maybe as a child, you had to manage other people's emotions, their health, or any crisis from a young age. So that made you learn to overfunction in emergencies. So your brain got rewarded for anticipating every problem even before it happened. This builds the inner belief that if I don't think of everything, or actually if I don't overthink of everything, something bad's going to happen and it'll be my fault if it does. The fourth one that I keep seeing is emotional neglect or invalidation. Kind of like same, but different of the things that I mentioned earlier. So if your fears or needs were dismissed, if you were told you're overreacting or you're being too dramatic or you're oversensitive, you may have internalized that. That's the only way to get someone to take you seriously is to amplify your fear. So for example, for me, I know for a fact that if I am anxious or if I'm sick or if something is wrong with me, that is how I catch my parents' attention. So catastrophizing can be your nervous system's way of saying, see, I'm here, this is serious, right? So when we suffer emotional neglect or invalidation constantly, especially in childhood, we amplify our fear to receive the attention that we are craving. So at the very core of it, catastrophizing is a survival strategy. It's your nervous system saying, I don't want to ever feel this powerless ever again. It can also be a stress response that you never got to complete. The thing is, my love, you're not addicted to drama, to drama, to trauma or drama or anxiety. You're just being hypervigilant. And there are a few things that you can do if you, like me, have the tendency to catastrophize. Well, the first thing, the fact that you're aware of your catastrophizing tendencies is already a huge first step, because awareness is everything. But let's break it down to what you can do if you find yourself caught in a catastrophizing spiral. So let me recap real quick. We catastrophize, especially when we are living in fear or in uncertainty, or if we have lived in fear and uncertainty and the threat is gone, it's still in our system, right? Like if we have lived in fear and uncertainty, whether now, recent days, or in childhood, sometimes that fear, that anxiety never got to be processed out of your nervous system, and that's why it keeps repeating. Okay, it is your brain's way of protecting you. Okay, it's trying to say, if I imagine the worst, I can anticipate it, I can control it, I can prepare for it. Except what is really happening is that you are reliving your worst case scenarios that haven't happened and probably will never happen. You burn out your nervous system in fight or flight. You miss the safety and the progress of what's happening right now. You miss being in the present moment. So first thing, like I said, you're aware of this. That's awesome. The second thing is that we need to name the story. Naming that this is your brain trying to protect you by predicting the worst. Giving it a name separates you from the spiral. I like to say there is a part of me that is actually in a catastrophizing situation. Okay. You can call it something playful like I am in disaster FM, or like my friend has something really cool that she says like, oh, my octopus arms are reaching for the worst case scenario. So naming the story or separating it from yourself. This is not to like diminish it. This is not to demonize it or say that it's bad, but it's really helpful to say there's a part of me that that is, spiraling into catastrophizing. The second thing is having a reality check. Is this happening right now? Is there something good or neutral that is happening in your life right now? What evidence do you have that whatever you're catastrophizing about is not actually happening? Okay. So for example, for me, if I keep thinking, what if this infection comes back? I need to anchor myself in the present moment by orienting in my surroundings and notice that I'm walking, I'm running, my worst symptoms are gone, that I've actually been in recovery for 3 months longer than the 1 month that I've had the infection. That is my evidence. The third thing is regulating your body, not just your thoughts. Catastrophizing is a giant clue, like I said before, that you have had a stressful experience that you never got to process. It's like a stress response that is on repeat, waiting to burst. This is why more logic will not release it, meaning you cannot think your way out of it. You have to move through it somatically. It has to move out of your body somatically. This can you know what I'm going to say here, it can come with don't try this at home disclaimer, only because the fear that's beneath the catastrophizing tendencies, it might be too much to your nervous system. So sometimes we catastrophize as a way to intellectualize what our nervous system deems as too much for us to process on our own. Okay. So underneath this tendency, there's usually fear. Old fear. So sometimes, and this is why I say maybe you don't try this at home on your own. You need to go there. As much as it feels scary and uncomfortable, the only way out is through, my love. Feel the fear. See what it wants to do. See what it wants to say. Sometimes it wants to say something and it wants to be witnessed and heard in a way that it was never witnessed and heard at the time of the trauma. Okay. I went through 2 months of no one ever listening to me from my medical team back in the States. It was only until I came to Jordan that people started taking me seriously. And that put a lot of fear in my body. And sometimes when I feel that fear, instead of like reaching for my phone or reaching for, a chat GPT diagnosis, even though I got diagnosed by my doctor, mind you, I sit with the fear and allow it to speak and allow it to say the things that I didn't have the chance to express, because not only was I navigating the medical system, but I was also trying to keep it together, right? So I'm sure that you've gone through situations like this. So feeling the fear, seeing what it wants to say, seeing what it wants to do. I also tend to shake, convulse even, cry out for my mom, cry out to God. Sometimes I reimagine the original trauma and picture myself fleeing or fighting back or saying things that that I should have said, or, this is not rumination. This is with the intention of completing the trauma response. Okay. This can sometimes complete the stress response, and doing it over again, because this is not a one and done deal. Healing is circular. So you might have to do this over and over and over again if you need to. Afterwards, you can try doing a regulation exercise, like putting your hand on your heart, hand on your belly, and breathing. Breathing is such an important tool. Doing the VU sound, or doing a long exhale humming, like inhaling and exhaling in a hum, like doing that for 10 minutes. Oh my God, that stimulates the vagus nerve, and it is magic. And of course, orienting, which is looking around you in the room, naming 5 things you see, 5 things you can, 5 colors or 3 textures that you see, and doing things that bring you to the present moment. So, my love, remember this mantra. You don't need to live in the worst case scenario to be safe. You can handle what's real, not what's imagined. And remember that you are a manifestation machine. So choose your thoughts wisely. If you catastrophize, you're not broken. But just don't believe your thoughts. Know that your nervous system is in survival mode. You don't really need to analyze why it's acting out. Just focus on regulating it using the tips that I mentioned. And if you'd like to rejig your finances to where you are operating from a more stable ground, then come join my 5-day audio program, 5 Days of Money Magic. The link to join is in the show notes, and it's a completely free program. Thank you so much for being here. If this episode was helpful, I'd love to hear from you. Leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or a comment on Spotify, or share a screenshot on IG and tag me at Nadine Zomot. Lots of love, and see you next time on Unfuck Your Money. Bye for now.